Caregiver, where you can find help and hope every Friday from 1 to 2 p.m. right here on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Ain't it good?
You may be owed some money. After 911 and 411, call 541. That's 727-541-1741. Call Gulfstream Motorsports for a diminished value report. Due to my 28 years experience in the auto salvage business, I'm very good with wrecks. So if your car's been involved in a wreck, call me for a diminished value report. Call 727-541-1741. You may be owed some money for the lost value of your repaired vehicle. And visit us at GulfstreamMotorsports.com.
Show me the money.
It's the Employment Opportunity Hour with Gene Hodge every Thursday night from 7 until 8.
So the purpose of the show is to help you out there to find something that you enjoy doing instead of a job. And at the start of the show, I normally give out a formula, which I know will guarantee you to find the type of job that you want right now.
Find out the formula to an enjoyable job with Gene Hodge's Employment Opportunity Hour every Thursday night from 7 until 8 here on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Show me the money.
Join the Tampa St. Pete Sports Connection live from Ferg Sports Bar and Grill every Saturday from noon to 2 as we cover Tampa Bay sports, from the Pee-wees to the preps to the pros, providing a positive perspective in our weekly interviews with NFL alumni and Florida Sports Hall of Fame inductees, as well as collegiate, high school, youth coaches, and players. Conversations from the clubhouse, as well as entertaining guests weekly. So be sure to have a championship day with the Tampa St. Pete Sports Connection, Saturdays from 12 to 2 on the Tan Talk family of stations.
Hi, this is Paul Malloy, host of Freedom Works, The Paul Malloy Show. I hope you'll join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, here on the Tan Talk Radio Network, where we strive to bring you the libertarian perspective on political events of the day. There's no show quite like Freedom Works, with in-depth interviews, our ultimate top 10 list, and so much more. So join us for Freedom Works, The Paul Malloy Show, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 10 to 11 a.m. here on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Tampa Bay's Tan Talk, entertaining and informative radio for the Sunshine State.
Can you hear the voices of the people marching everywhere? And now you should know that we are not going anywhere. Can you feel us now? We ain't backing down. No, we won't turn around. Now you see the fringe minority. Can you hear the sound rising through the crowd? Yes, sing it loud and proud. Now you see the fringe minority. Whoa. Now you see the fringe minority.
I'm going to email you a new link because the studio said they can't see you. So I'm going to email it to you or text it to you.
Now you see the fringe minority. After taking everything we had, now we're gonna take it back. Everybody watching as we take a stand. And you thought that you could take us out. Now we're gonna take it down. It's the final act. Better take a bow. Can you hear the voices of the people marching everywhere? And now you should know that we are not going anywhere. Can you feel us now? We ain't backing down. No, we won't turn around. Now you see the fringe minority. Can you hear the sound? Hear the sound of the crowd. Yes, sing it loud. Now you see the fringe minority. The bells are ringing out and victory is calling. The saints go marching now, the whole world is watching. And the bells are ringing out and victory is calling. And the saints go marching now, the whole world is watching. Can you feel us now? Feel us now, backing down. Now you see the fringe minority.
All right, Jara, that was amazing.
Thank
Once
you.
again, we heard you on the radio.
I love being on the radio.
You're such an amazing artist. Thank you so much for blessing us with your beautiful voice.
Thank you. That song is,
Bobby in the booth. Thank you.
that song is called Fringe Minority, and you guys can grab it at Jera.com, JIERRA.com. And here we are, Miriam and Jara, and another week of our show, Voices for Change, a human rights show. And we are live, actually streaming video on Facebook and YouTube right now, and live on FM radio throughout Florida and New York.
That's right. Yeah. So who knows who all's listening to us, but hopefully a lot of people, because the Declaration of Human Rights are extremely important to go over.
That's right. And you know what, guys? We decided to do this show based on human rights because human rights is non-polarizing. Like, you've got situations with government, you've got situations with what people believe regarding religion, race, economic status.
Right.
But
Lots of different issues.
But our basic human rights are our basic human rights. There are 30 of them that were put into the effect by the United Nations in the 1940s, and we all have them, and we should know them so that we can uphold them.
Yes, definitely. It's extremely important. Yeah. And today we're going to have a special guest that's going to go over the Mental Health Declaration of Human Rights. So it's going to be a great show.
Yes, Reverend Fred Shaw. Can't wait to see him in a little bit. And my goodness, I mean, we're going to get into it. I have some things to read off, but
yeah, definitely.
This man's list of credits.
Yeah, his resume is quite impressive.
Yeah, very, very an amazing freedom fighter for sure.
Yes, definitely. Well, Jarrett, read us some of those human rights. I know you've been working a lot lately on doing new recordings, and you have a lot of artist advocacy. And I just want you to talk to us a little bit about what you've been up to.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you so much. I am, primarily an artist, and I act, I write, I do music, but I'm primarily known as a singer. And I have mentioned before on this show that I came away from the mainstream entertainment industry because there was definitely a certain narrative that was being followed, and I did not feel that I had freedom of speech as an artist or as a person. And by the way, freedom of speech is not only in our Constitution in the United States of America, but whether you believe in the Constitution or not, it's one of our basic human rights, which is actually Article 19. Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion, everyone has the right of freedom. I'll give that to you one more time. Third time's the charm. Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference. Can you believe that? And to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers.
Mm-hmm.
So right now there is unfortunately a lot of censorship going on across social media for people that speak about freedom and human rights. And that is actually against Article 19 of the Basic Human Rights. So I'm fighting for that. And you know what? When I found that fight to be very hard on social media, Miriam reached down and Steve Acaro with Chapters Rap and Tan Talk and said, okay, well, let's put you on the radio then.
I know. Exactly. I know. It's so awesome. Thank you so much, Chapters Rap, for holding this space for us to, fight for the freedom to, say what we'd like to say and, get our voices out there.
That's right. Because honestly, it's been challenging, but when, when one door closes, another one opens, or if the doors and the windows are closed, blast through the wall, do whatever you have to do.
Right.
Just don't be stopped. There is always a way to find a solution. So at one point, I definitely did not know how I was going to get my music out there or my voice heard. And, there's always another way. So if social media is not working, let's try radio. If that's not working, let's try a podcast. If that's not working, let's find a newspaper,
Yeah, exactly. Just get your message out there. And I think it's such an important lesson to go over week after week, and just to reiterate the importance of following your dreams and not giving up. And sure, there's different challenges in life, and there's different stumbling blocks, and there can be different opinions and different viewpoints, but you have your right to hold your viewpoint and fight for what you believe.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I would love to bring up one of the human rights that we've never talked about on this show as of yet. It's a really good one, and I don't think people realize how it affects artists very adversely at these times. And that's why being an independent artist that's fighting for freedom, not only freedom on a broad scale, but freedom as an artist in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
But there is an article 17, and part 1 of that is everyone has the right to own property alone as well as in association with others. But part 2 is no one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property.
Mm-hmm.
Now, an amazing thing that goes on in the music labels is that I, as an artist, for example, have written, produced, orchestrated, recorded music. But if it is done under the budget of the record label, you leave that record label, you cannot touch that music. Even though it is your intellectual property, because you recorded it on their dime, you do not have access to it anymore. You can go re-record it, you can go perform it, but you can't touch that recording. It's called the master recording. And that has actually been something that artists have been fighting against for decades. And so that's, again, why it's so important to really go out and support independent artists. And the way that you guys can really support them is find avenues to buy their music. And I went over this briefly. I'll just go over it real quick. And then Miriam would love to know what you're doing before we bring on Fred. But this is very important that people don't realize. Many years ago, people stopped purchasing music and they started streaming music. And what that does is, unfortunately, for example, on Spotify, one stream is only worth 0.0033 cents. So that means it takes 100,000 streams for an artist to make about $330.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And I believe that that's against a basic human right of some sort anyway, which is that artists are not able to survive very well as this continues to shift towards streaming. So almost all artists independently have their music up for sale on various different sites. iTunes, Amazon Music, they do make it rather challenging when you go through those because they generally divert the customer over to the streaming platform. But for example, Bandcamp, like jera.bandcamp.com, you can buy my music there. You can buy a lot of artists' music there. Or if you find an artist that you love and you're on Instagram or something, or you go to their website, find their link where you can purchase their music. Because just that 99 cents, you have to understand that it takes hundreds and hundreds of streams to make $1. So just to give them $1 or $2 right up front it's actually life-changing when that starts to accumulate for an artist.
Definitely. Yes. Whatever we can do to help artists and advocate on behalf of human rights and artistry and, mental health reform, because, unfortunately, we still have a pretty big fight ahead of us because the issue that you're bringing up kind of touches on the issues regarding mental health reform.
Absolutely. Because
and artists are unfortunately targeted for their positivity, their voice, their light, their power to change the world, to bring their voice for change to the world. They're targeted, unfortunately, from
mainstream.
Mainstream. There you go. That's a nice way to say it.
Yeah. And like I said, as has, really come to light, especially in the last couple of years, unfortunately, is that when an artist does start to speak out against certain narratives, we'll just call it that. Sometimes I say agenda, but narrative is a nicer word about that are being heavily pushed by the standardized, media and entertainment system, then they really are ostracated.
Yeah.
They lose their contracts, they lose their shows. So there's a lot of artists running around right now that have stepped away and are trying to find their way. And they're going to be doing it independently and finding new media outlets. So please support them, because normally they wound up in that situation because they wanted to stand up for some kind of freedom or some kind of basic human right.
Yep. That's awesome.
Boom.
There you go. And that was a mic drop. And the Reverend Fred Shaw that we're going to have on today, he's going to go into different details that he speaks out on behalf of. He speaks a lot for Citizens Commission on Human Rights. And if anybody is interested to learn a little bit more about what JERA is advocating on behalf of and talking about, you can definitely go to Citizens Commission on Human Rights and you can search artists on that website, and you can find a lot about how artists are targeted by psychiatrists and the unfortunate drugging of artistry.
Oh, yeah. And that's very, very, very prevalent within the record labels.
Yeah.
So more to come on that, but not tonight.
Yeah, definitely.
But it is definitely an epidemic going on. And sometimes it's not by the artist's choice. It's, there's a rabbit hole going on. We've touched on it tonight. I'll be happy to bring more light to that in the near future.
Yeah, definitely. What we want to do is just spread light and love and awareness with our show, with Voices for Change, and just make sure that people are aware of what's going on and that you're pointed towards the websites in order to get more information about it.
That's right. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And Miriam, I mean, when I was, you actually have known Fred Shaw for a very long time. I didn't even realize it, but I've sung for so many different things that he's been a part of since I was
Oh.
like about 10 years old.
Wow.
Like World Literacy Crusade and various different organizations he's been involved with. But also you guys have a lot near and dear to your hearts with regards to mental health reform, but also he does a lot with the foster care system
know.
specifically.
Yeah.
And I know that you work with an incredible organization called Miracles Outreach that focuses on reform for foster kids as well. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, definitely. I can talk about that. But just to touch on the bill that Fred Shaw helped us pass in the United States, hopefully he'll touch on that just a little bit today. But that's so great that he did that, because literally he went out and he lobbied, advocated. I'm not quite sure exactly which word you'd want to use, but you ensured that that bill would be passed and kids would be protected in schools, so that schools wouldn't be able to mandate psychiatric medication in schools. So
in order to even sign up, like
right.
you can't come to school unless.
Yes, I know.
And was that the, I'm sorry, was that the children's, oh, sorry, where is this note here? Oh, the Child Medication Safety Act.
Mm-hmm. There you
Nice.
go. The child say it one more time.
Yeah, it's a tongue twister.
I know.
It is the Child Medication Safety Act, and that was passed federally. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Wow, man, give it up for Fred Shaw.
Yeah, I know. Big
Woo!
shout out.
Big shout out, Reverend Fred.
I know, right? Good job. Yeah. So, and that touches right on parental Bill of Rights that we have put together in the state of Florida, and that we're hoping that other states will take on in the United States because
Yes.
yeah.
I have that right here in my hand, in fact, and it really covers things that you would think don't need to be covered, but they do. And they were, which also includes a parent's right to choose how their child is educated, the right to be notified immediately if your minor child is removed from school transportation or school sponsored activity and taken to a receiving facility for an involuntary examination. Like, these are actually rights that have been given to parents. And I believe that CCHR is working to pass a similar bill in multiple states across the country. Is that correct?
Mhm.
The goal is all over nationally.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, we got to protect kids.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we do.
definitely. So yeah, Jerry, you mentioned Miracles Outreach a little while ago, and I am ramping up to start working on their annual fundraiser, their annual gala. And
wow.
what I've been working on over the past couple of years is getting the first ever wellness program up in a group home where foster kids live, sometimes for their whole entire lives. This foster home, it helps kids that are ages 12 to 17. So children that are younger than age 12 don't actually live there, but foster kids can live in the system for their whole life until they age out. And then, they'll still be taken care of by the state until they're sometimes 24 years old.
Yeah, which is beautiful. And I believe that Miracles is a little bit special because these are specifically girls that have been unfortunately victims of abuse in one way or another. So child trafficking, abuse in the home. So it's extra special what you guys are doing for those girls.
Yeah, they're hard. They're pretty hardcore stories sometimes.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, by the time a girl gets to Miracles, they've sometimes been in like 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 to 9 different placements.
Wow, unbelievable. Yeah. And that gala, I was at your gala last year. It was absolutely phenomenal. So
Yes.
if you want to give the people listening any information on how they can find out more information, and support that, let them know.
Well, we don't have the promo out yet, but
Okay.
definitely stay tuned, and you can go to miraclesoutreach.org for any details regarding that.
Okay, miraclesoutreach.org.
Mhm.
That's an important one.
Yeah.
Well, what do you
definitely.
say about bringing on Mr. Shaw? I've got some, if you want, I can read just a couple notes from this extensive bio.
Okay, definitely.
You're going to check in. Is he ready to go?
I will definitely check in with him.
All
and
right.
then
Well, meanwhile, I'm going to start reading some of these absolutely honorable credits here. So Reverend Fred Shaw Jr. is the Director of Public Affairs for Citizens Commission on Human Rights, also known as CCHR. He is the president of the NAACP, Inglewood, South Bay, and Compton. So I feel like there's a song that should be like, California.
I
Okay,
know,
no.
right? Super impressive, right?
Yes, and as we said earlier, he was very responsible with CCHR in overseeing the Children's Task Force, which got the Child Medication Safety Act passed. But this goes on and on. He was
He's gotten
Actually-
several resolutions done.
Yeah.
Dealing with protecting people from psychiatric abuse, passed by the NAACP national office and body. Oh my gosh, he travels the world educating people on the truth about psychiatry's assault on society.
Yeah. And you know what I found was really interesting too is that there are some trips that he's been on with regards to Africa and apartheid. And something that people do not realize, Miriam, we posted a video about this once, but the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, also known as TRC, he's helped with the investigation of apartheid crimes, where he helped CCHR, Citizens Commission on Human Rights, present evidence to this TRC about the role of psychiatric and psychological racism in introducing and maintaining apartheid, and how Africans were allowed to die from easily treatable, medical conditions during that time. And there's a through line that people don't realize to racism that has actually been fueled by major sections of the psychotropic psychiatric agenda.
Yeah,
so Fred
unfortunately,
Shaw
it's true.
he's amazing. He was the Los Angeles County Sheriff Deputy for 13 years.
Wow.
He also started with one of my dear friends, Reverend Alfredi. He started co-founder and president of the World Literacy Crusade, which actually works on eradicating poverty and hopelessness in inner cities through education.
Wow.
So this man, this guy.
Yeah, I know this guy. He's talk about a human rights advocate.
Absolutely. So if you're ready, Fred, let's bring in Reverend Fred Shaw.
All right. How you doing? Powerful women. God, I was listening to you. I would rather do the show listening to you.
This guy. Hey, Fred, I haven't seen you in a long time. I used to sing for you all the time.
The last time I saw you...
Don't say the year. Don't say the year.
I won't say the year. But the last time, without rehearsal, you nailed The Greatest Love of All. I was like, wow, because that is one of the hardest songs in the world to sing.
Oh,
you have such a good memory.
Oh,
it
my
was like
gosh.
last minute. Can you sing Whitney Houston? And Fred Shaw, this giant man. How tall are you, Fred? You're a big guy.
6'6".
6'6",
Yeah.
comes walking by and he goes, if you're going to sing Whitney, you better sing Whitney.
You better sing
and
Whitney.
I'm backstage. and then afterwards he comes up, he goes, nailed it. And it was like the biggest
Aw.
compliment ever.
So sweet. Yeah, Jarrah has an amazing voice.
Absolutely.
Serious. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Fred, for coming on today. It's such a blessing to have you on here.
Yeah, you're a hero.
Well, it's a blessing to be brought on a show for people who have the courage to talk about issues such as mental health. Everybody else is a rah-rah group, but you guys actually want the truth exposed, so you invite me on. So it takes some courage to do that, especially the way society is going right now. So I appreciate you two for bringing me on.
Thank you, sir.
That's sweet. Thank you.
Well, my goodness, this list, I mean, it looks like you came from a family of humanitarians and kind of soldiers in the human rights department. I read a little bit about your mom, and it seems like you've been doing this for decades, Fred. What really inspired you to even start down this path in your life?
Well, first of all, you're absolutely right. My parents were community leaders. My mother was well known, but my father was behind the scenes making things happening and opening up nonprofits and doing things. We created, my mother and father, the first Black run and owned Pop Warner football programs in the inner city of Willowbrook and Compton. We were always into it. I just grew up into it. So I didn't even know any other way but to stand up for people. I used to bring people home to eat at our house and didn't realize that we didn't have enough food. But it was just, we wanted to help other people. And I just grew up with amazing parents that, not only loved the community, but loved our family. And we all felt loved. It was just a great thing growing up. But then what happened is my son was diagnosed with dyslexia. And at the time, I was a Los Angeles County Sheriff Deputy, so I questioned everything. I grew up in the inner city, so I questioned most things. And they made a mistake. They told me that my son needed to, because he had dyslexia, to see a therapist or a psychiatrist. And I said, well, what for? and they said to help him with his self-esteem. I said, well, I'm his father. That's my job.
There you go.
And so, a friend of mine actually introduced me to a study program, and I took my son to the program, and they handled his dyslexia. And I called the school and said, hey, I want him retested. I had him in private therapy, and they couldn't find that he ever had dyslexia. And so I asked the question, well, if this was incurable, because that's what they had told me, and I've just watched the miracle with my own son, how many people are they misdiagnosing because they don't have a solution?
Right.
Wow.
And so that led on a journey. Then I was introduced to Citizens Commission on Human Rights, CCHR. And then I started seeing the truth and what was going on. And then maybe 30 years ago, I attached myself to it and became like a volunteer spokesperson. And then in the last 6 years or so, I actually became a member, working for CCHR, because I don't see as many things as valuable as knowing the truth of what's going on with your own mind.
Wow. Incredible.
That's amazing. Well done.
And what you said about this misdiagnosis, which occurs, I mean, Miriam knows the numbers more than I do, millions of people.
It's rampant.
Is that, these drugs that can, kids and adults also can be put on so easily have the effects. I have this, I do like to read this off at times. This is reports from the FDA's MedWatch system on violent adverse effects linked to psychotropic drugs.
Yeah, please reduce the harmful effects.
Yeah, homicidal ideation, meaning thoughts of homicide, hostility, physical assault, actual homicide, psychosis, violence-related symptoms. Aggression is a huge one. Mania, suicide or suicidal ideology. So just to, like you said, Fred, have a teacher say, your kid has a learning disability, we're going to put them on these psychotropic drugs, just like that, which you handled immediately with some study and a study technology that might have helped with that, to have gone from such an easy solution to the possibility of putting your son on drugs that could have very badly mentally damaged him is terrifying.
It's so great that you saved your son from that, Fred.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that one of the things that we all must strive for is to know truth. It doesn't matter what it is. We need to know the actual truth of the thing. The truth is that we've been operating for 30 years or so on a premise that there's chemical imbalance of the brain. CCHR has been saying this is false. There is no chemical imbalance of the brain. CCHR has gone to experts who are in the field of psychiatry and psychology, who said there's no chemical imbalance of the brain. But they made $15.6 billion a year on the chemical imbalance of the brain theory. So therefore, the chemical imbalance of the brain theory is still here after major psychiatrists that have debunked the system. So, we're still operating on where is the money instead of where is the cure or the treatment to help people. And they say, it's a funny thing. They say, if you put the fox in charge of the hen house, you'll have chicken every time.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to have to remember that one. And what you were just saying about the chemical imbalance was also finally cracked across many media platforms, thank goodness, that it was debunked. And there was finally reports that came out that there's no such thing as a serotonin imbalance in the brain. Fred, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Definitely. Tell us about that.
The University College London took 17 major studies, and they reviewed them, and they saw that there was no proof that serotonin or any of this stuff was part of the chemical imbalance of the brain. And even in our museum, we have testimony from experts that say just because you see changes in the brain doesn't mean that there's something that's dysfunctional. So they basically have known this information. And the moment that it really got exposed and people started talking about it and people started saying Tom Cruise was right and all of this type of stuff, then all of a sudden psychiatry tried to distance itself from the chemical imbalance of the brain theory. But the thing is that if they were against it or didn't believe it, how come they never spoke up? How come they never came to the public and say, well, we just want you to know that we're not backing this theory? No, they made the money on it. They kept giving diagnoses, they kept giving drugs, and they kept destroying lives. And I know some of the people that listen in on these shows sometimes say, well, he's hard on psychiatry and they're just trying to help. Actually, they're trying to help themselves. So what happens is you and I are normal. Mom dies. We go somewhat sad. They say depressed. Then they give us a drug when sadness is actually the appropriate reaction for the death of mom.
Right. Losing somebody you love. Yeah.
Instead of being numb and not feeling anything.
Exactly. So, the question becomes, are we supposed to turn back flips and cheer? Or do we show a sadness that mom is deceased? And so what they're doing is taking normal reactions and making them mental illnesses. You can see this with the terrible twos with little kids. Yeah. Now they're drugging little kids. Well, since the beginning of time, 2-year-olds are starting realizing there's a world around them. They need to create effects on people. They're the smallest person in the environment. They're doing what they need to do to survive, which is actually the natural thing to do. But we're drugging now for that.
No, I know. And it's completely unacceptable, actually. I mean, you just it like really gets me to the core, Fred. Like when we talk about a child being drugged, it's really unacceptable, right? Because what we need to do as a society is we need to demand that the child's body health is looked into, their education is looked into, the environment they're living in is looked into. And it can't be a first reaction to give a harmful medication to a child that their brain doesn't even fully develop until they're sometimes like 25 years old or something like that. I'm not a medical doctor, obviously, but I've just read a lot about this area, and a child can really be messed up by given a drug that has a harmful effect.
Well, the side effects of these drugs, and I tell people, especially if I'm in a debate or I know I got people in the audience challenging me on these theories, is I tell them, don't believe me and don't believe the person challenging me, believe the commercial. The commercials tell you that the drugs cause suicide and have suicide actions and you can have permanent tics that and muscle reactions that stay with you the rest of your life. The commercials tell you what's going on. So you don't have to believe me or the person challenging me. Just believe the commercial because that's where they're selling it. But because we've made it to where they have to reveal the side effects, then people can know. But most people, they don't hear the words, they see the pictures.
That's right. And it's playing clouds and a dog and someone picking a flower with pretty music while they're listing out these horrific effects. And people don't listen to it. They've almost become numb to it. And they're looking at the sun shining and they're running through a field now. And it's like, oh, wait, did you just say suicide?
Right. Yeah, no, seriously. That's a pretty big word there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is all in the commercials.
I know. I wish we had like sorry.
No, I'm just going to say, we call it psychological manipulation,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what is happening when they do that. Even though they're telling you one thing, they are sending us a totally different message. And it appears that people will go with what they see over what they hear. And so that's why we still see the commercials and we get it to where it looks like, and I'm not saying the CCHR is saying this, but to me as an observer, it looks like the major networks across the nation are afraid to speak out about these drugs because of all the money that's being made on commercials and stuff like that. So we're in a catch-22 where we have to alert and wake up the people so that the people stand up for themselves. We can't depend on the government. We can't. Every bill that passes has got a mental health component. For what?
Yeah.
What is this? The Bible says the fruit. You'll know them by their fruit. Well, what is the fruit? 20 veterans killing themselves a day. Homeless population has exploded across the nation. Children being put on psychiatric drugs as being part of schools. All of these things are happening, and we're still seeing a mass shooting almost every week. We're still seeing. So what good were they? We wasn't having that before they came in and took over. So what good is it?
Well, sure. I mean, you bring up a really good point there. And you're right. What good is it? I mean, you bring up an excellent point regarding the mass shootings, right? Because when I was a kid, when you were a kid, we didn't see things like that. No.
especially when I was a kid.
Yeah, well, for sure.
Yes, and actually, I believe, and Fred and Miriam, you would know better than I, but I do have some paperwork in my hands about that as well. That's been looked into by CCHR with regards to the association between these mass shootings and psychotropic drugs. And 90% of the shooters were either on or detoxing from psychotropic drugs in the last 20 years of almost 40 mass shootings. So that is a very, very, very high statistic and a very high correlation that really does need to be investigated a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty sure we are needing to encourage the public to almost demand that an autopsy happen after some sort of horrific crime takes place. Like if there's a mass shooter, the public needs to really, really demand that we go in and do some sort of investigation of that, I would imagine. Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, you're absolutely right. It's something I advocate for, is that whenever you see a mass shooting like that, somebody drowned their kids, they commit suicide, that they do an investigation to see if that person has been on or is on psychiatric drugs. That is the correct assessment for what should be done to determine it. We try to find out if they taken alcohol or street drugs. Why aren't we looking at to see if they taking these prescribed drugs that are just as dangerous, if not more, than the street?
Yep. Totally agreed. Yeah. I mean, I look at it and I think like we definitely have a mental health crisis in our nation. And I'm so glad that you are standing up and doing so much about it, Rev.
Yeah, you're a hero, man.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, we have a mental health crisis, but we got to understand that it appears, and some of the things that I say are not the words of CCHR. They're my observation and what I think. And I would like to just say that we cannot blame everything on psychiatric drugs that happen, but you're absolutely right. It's a contributing factor in a lot of cases. And, you know, standing up against this type of evil is not hard for me, you know, as a minister, as a person who wants and pursues truth. It's not hard for me. And, you know, if that's my mission in life, is to take on these bad guys like that, and I call them that, because I think anybody that will electroshock children are evil. I don't care what the explanation is. If you can't see the effect of electroshock on a child, if you can't see the effect of electroshock on a pregnant mother, which means that you're actually electroshocking a child before he's born. I mean, if you can't see the evil of that, then, you know, I pray for you, but I can see the evil of that. And we don't electroshock children. What, you know, the same electroshock we're looking at being done to citizens would be torture if it was war. So you can't put 460 volts through a person's body and then say, oh, well, this is a good thing. If you and I got electric shock treatments, we would lose about 1 million brain cells. So if you do that to a 2-year-old, not only do they lose those brain cells, they lose all of the brain cells that would have been created off those brain cells. So you pretty much stunt the growth and make the person a patient of mental health for life.
Yeah.
And for those, if I may, Fred, that don't entirely understand, because we're speaking about this as we know about it. And when you say electric shock, and there are people that are probably listening right now that aren't even aware of what that is, would you mind just briefly telling people what that quote unquote treatment, or rather torture, is?
In the 50s and the 60s, they used to do electroshock. It was so damaging to individuals that it broke spines and bones and things. It was his own worst nightmare because people who were witnessing it couldn't stand looking at it. Now they come back with it with paralytic drugs and anesthesia, so you don't see the trauma that's being done on the body. It's 460 volts or so going through the brain that is done to the point to where the person has a grand mal seizure. When it has a grand mal seizure, generally it's been the consensus that people receive a certain amount of brain damage. Now, I don't know how big a brain damage or how small, but I know it causes that. But just to induce a seizure into an individual and then call that mental health, when the person just becomes more docile generally, and they consider that a victory. So if you are one of those parents that are on your kids' butts all the time about performing and doing something good with their lives and everything, and you're irritating anybody, and you get old enough, then they can have you permitted or put into a mental institution, and you can receive electric shock. It's a little bit more complicated than that, so I don't want to mislead people, but at the same, that's the result sometimes of what you got. And so they can basically get you involuntarily put in. And then that's where your declaration of mental health comes in, because the patient, or at least somebody that the patient trusts, should make the decisions on that patient. My sister's daughter was taking ecstasy, flipped out, and then the psychiatrist had her, and my sister went in and said, I'm a social worker, so forth. She's having problems with ecstasy. Do not give her a psychiatric drug on top of that. And the psychiatrist told her, she's 19, she belongs to me.
Ooh.
Those were the words. So we are dealing with, when CCHR is out here fighting this fight, there's a whole lot of things that happens because of the actions that we take to help protect people's rights. Because you should, even in prison, you have rights.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
so
that's right.
So you have less rights in a mental institution. You can be 14 years old, throw a sandwich, and get choked to death. You know, and so we have to keep fighting. We have to get other groups to ally with us. We have to have people go on our website, cchrint.org, and see the information. And there has to become a whole movement on this. One day, I promise Jerry, and I don't know if I'm pulling it up, but I'm gonna try.
Let's go. Yeah.
We're gonna do a 1 million man march or million person march on these psychiatric drugs and stuff, and calling to task mental health. We have.
I'll be there, Fred. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you'll be performing. So
it's like a freedom march. Well, like a freedom march.
Let's
right,
do a freedom
Jara?
march. Yeah. And I just want to take a quick moment, because what he was saying about electric shock therapy, or I'm sorry, I say it wrong. Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Electric shock
fine.
therapy. Okay. Article 5
Yeah,
in
Article
the
5.
human rights is no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment. I'm going to go ahead and read that again. No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment. I say putting that much amount of electricity through someone's brain to the point where they're having a grand mal seizure is torture.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, listen, both of you guys, I feel like we're kind of on the same freedom team as far as fighting for human rights overall, and especially in the area of mental health reform. But, you know, there may be some people listening that have by chance chosen this path. And, you know, if you could say something to somebody like that that's listening, like that they went to their doctor and their doctor only gave them a psychiatric medication as a choice, you know, what do we do? What sort of alternatives would we suggest, right? Because I mean, it's, you know, it for adults, if they have informed consent and it's not forced, then it's their choice, right? But, you know, there are different things that a person can look into.
Well,
yeah. And you bring up a good point, and then Fred, of course, but like you said, people go to their doctors and they go to who they consider to be leaders,
right,
and to get help. And if this is the only thing that they're being prescribed with no other avenue, they just don't know. They have to be informed.
Well, right. Yeah. The person really deserves to be informed, right? I mean, the person is in pain. Maybe they're in emotional pain. Maybe they're in physical pain. Something's going on in their life. Maybe they've lost their job. Something's happened. And then the person goes to their doctor regarding their lack of sleep or their depression or the fact that they can't stop crying. And then the doctor prescribes a medication without explaining all their different options. And this is where informed consent comes in.
Right. And they didn't fail. The doctors failed them. So what else? What are some other alternatives that you would recommend, Reverend?
Well, first of all, let me just say this on behalf of the Citizens Commission on Human Rights. We provide information so that the person has choice. Now, they choose to do something that's contradictory to what we are explaining to them. That is their choice. We're not medical doctors, so we can't take on the position of the ultimate authority, but we can spread the information. We can get it out to millions of people. We can continue to do shows like this so people know what's going on.
Definitely.
And so that's kind of the position that we take on it. It's the individual's choice. And that's actually what rights are about. It's person having a choice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But also,
ensuring it, making sure they have it. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, I mean, it is about whatever their choice is. I'm reading some of the notes on people speaking about what we're talking about, and someone saying like, oh, well, it saved my life, you know? So it's up to the person, but as far as Citizens Commission on Human Rights goes, it's about informing the public, ensuring that the public is aware of the harmful effects, informing the public of the facts regarding suicide and the school shooters, and making sure that the legal forms are available to somebody as far as their informed consent, or, you know, making sure that they have medical protection.
Yeah. And sorry, go ahead, Fred.
One of the things I want to add, like to the person who just said it saved their life, good for you. I mean, I'm happy that it saved your life, but it's also contributed to taking lives. And, you know, what is good for one person may not be good for another person. And so we're saying if they put it in the field of science, because the one thing I want everybody to get, this is not science.
Right.
This is Russian roulette being played by doctors. And so, you know, a lot of times, because it worked for me, you know, I know people who said that their nerves get calmed down when they drink alcohol. And that may be true, but you don't want them driving. So the thing is that we must make sure that we use all of the information. For example, there's some major studies that have come out. Even I read one yesterday where they're talking about using herbs and all of this stuff. Psychiatrists and people like that are looking at that and finding that it is more effective overall than giving the drugs. Now, that's not from CCHR. I saw that on a video yesterday where psychiatrists, and then we're saying that. So let's, you know, we in America especially, but the world, we like the quick fix. You know, mom died, I'm depressed, give me the drug. Well, what's the difference if you give him the drug or if he drinks alcohol? I mean, it's like one comes from the doctor, one comes from the liquor store. They both do the same thing, or at least the person who is self-medicating is trying to do the same thing. He's trying to relieve himself of the pain. So, but that comes through a spiritual conviction. That comes through understanding life. That comes from a lot of different things that can help you get through those situations, because everybody goes through it. When Cain killed Abel, I bet you Eve cried. So it's like, you know, we have to just take it from there.
Right. Exactly. Well, I mean, I can tell you just 1 second. I just wanted to say, as far as everything that you're talking about right now, I can tell you, being that I barely survived the broken mental health system in the U.S. I mean, my mom was in mental hospitals in Florida, Georgia, and California. And if I had found Citizens Commission on Human Rights when my family was going through what we were going through, it would have saved my mom's life.
Wow. Yeah.
Definitely. So I really applaud you for speaking out on behalf of all the citizens in the U.S. and then obviously globally, because I know you go outside of the U.S. sometimes to speak on behalf of the citizens. Your heart is huge and your care factor is enormous. And I commend you for all of your efforts. I really appreciate everything you're doing to speak out and get the bills passed and not being afraid to, you know, talk about the truth and make sure that people are aware. Thank you so much.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
No problem at all. You know, we have to do this, because when people threaten our right, we cannot value our comfort over our freedom.
Yep.
Because once you lose your freedom, you will never be comfortable again.
That's true.
And so we have to stand up and say, give us what is right, not what's popular, not what the experts money, you know, because if they were truly experts, they could fix this. But they can't fix it, so they're not true experts.
Yeah. And if I may just bring up something real quick, because obviously we're giving a lot of information. I always like to move people into a thought process of hope and what can I do and how can I enable myself. Obviously, like you said, they can go to CCHR.int vitaminandrip.org. But also, we've had a lot of people on this show. We've had double board certified doctors. Actually, we've had quite a few doctors. We've also had certified psychiatrists and psychologists all talking about this. And we've had holistic healers, other people that heal in different ways, but there are other things that can be looked at. And just to move people into like, well, I don't know what to do. Like, you just gave me all this information. What can I do? Well, there's a lot that can be looked into. There's vitamin drips to actually ensure that your body has the nutrients that it needs. It can be your diet, that you might be eating the wrong kinds of foods. There are allergy tests that you can do for your body. I've seen people with certain food allergies and they seemed absolutely psychotic. I've seen children that were being diagnosed with mental health. They couldn't read, they couldn't study. They were about to be put on psychiatric drugs and they had a food allergy. Looking, like you said, at the environmental causes, what's going on with the family. If you're not sleeping, what's going on? Are you on your phone all day long and then trying to go to sleep when we're all learning about blue light? And that's not good. So there are so many factors where one can actually gently and effectively start moving themselves into a causative position if you are feeling like overwhelmed or I don't know what to do. Miriam, I know that you also provide counseling and information. If you want to give your, information on that.
Yes, I do. I do a lot of coaching. So if anybody wants to look up miriamputnam.org, you can definitely get in touch with me that way.
Yeah, but like I said, as we move towards trying to move people into, we've given them this information. If they don't have another route, we have other shows that are on the internet now from the other shows we've done with doctors. And like I said, vitamin drips, different sleep therapies, different food allergy testing, environmental solutions, all kinds of stuff that can be done so that you guys can feel causative in this journey.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's very important. And I think that the biggest thing that you brought up, Rev, is just to know the truth, read, be informed, and like talk to your doctor about it. Aren't there other options? What else can I do? How come this is the only thing I'm being offered? Can't we try vitamin drips, or can we try, herbs, or can we try different things? There's so much power in our voice. Speaking of voices for change, right? You gotta open your mouth and you gotta, not be afraid to speak up. And sure, sometimes it's uncomfortable, but you just push forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that one of the things I would ask your audience to do before you put your child or anybody on a psychiatric drug, have them go through a full medical examination. It is very difficult to tell the difference between anemia and depression. It is difficult to know if a person is just babbling incoherently or if they have a brain tumor. The urinary tract can cause things that look like mental illness. The thyroid can cause a mirror image mental illness. So what we're saying is that go down and get a full
medical check,
not a cursory, a full medical examination. Even if you have your blood work done by a chemist, make sure that you get it, and you might be surprised at how many of these so-called mental illnesses have underlying causes. I want to tell one quick story, and then I remember I was giving a speech at Compton College out here in California, and a lady came.
We got 2 minutes, my friend, not to cut you off. Just wanted to give you the 2-minute mark here.
Okay, 45 seconds.
Yes, sir.
And said, I heard you, Rev. This is what we got. We got a girl who howls like an animal. She scratches her face, pulls her ears, yanks her hair. She fights you when you pick up. She moans all during the night. And the psychiatrist had given her Prozac, 2 years old. I told her to take the girl to the doctor, and they found out that she had severe ear infection and head lice.
Oh, wow.
And they had given her Prozac, which would not have worked in 200 years.
Right, sure.
Yep.
So that's why I say the medical examination is so important.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. You are amazing. We're honored to have you.
You are so amazing. Thank you for being such a hero, such an amazing human rights advocate, and speaking out on behalf of mental health.
And that's
so awesome.
CCHR INT, right? INT, which stands for International, CCHRINT.org. Thank you, Reverend Fred Shaw. Thank you,
Reverend
Miriam.
Fred Shaw. Thank you, Jara.
Voices for Change, everybody.
Yes,
See you next week.
Yes, and let's hear your song Freedom now.
Yes, Freedom. Me and the Marine rapper. Let's go.
So shred down our freedom. Thou shalt not threaten nor tread down our freedom. We will defend till the end our freedom.
This home of the grave, so the flag that I wave is the one that was made by my ancestors slaves, and they came rolling graves, so I'm breaking the chains and I'm bucking the system, making a change. Devices were made and I never will cave. Yeah, I'm bearing these arms, but I don't hibernate, and I go hyperdrive and I do not evade. When it's stupid invading, I brandish my blade. This is a holy war, this is for glory, and this is the reason my people was fighting for. It was the knocking from put on your uniform. This is the coldest war, another culture war. This is a sequel. Listening all of my people. All we have left is a shred of our